What's going on, guys? Your boy Fluff here. Today we're talking about the CorpseMancer. We're going to address the questions we get all the time. We're going to talk about all the variations that we've seen out there, what works, what doesn't work. We're going to talk about why we've landed on the setup that we have. And we're also going to talk about some DPS thresholds you guys need to consider when you're playing the CorpseMancer. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now, first and foremost, guys, always keep up to date on the Diablo fans guide. We do change that pretty regularly if we feel that we've discovered something maybe even better, or some hotfix goes through and changes how something plays. We will always do our best to keep those up to date, and you can always come over to the stream and ask your various questions. But we'll try to address most of the questions in this video. Now, the biggest question, and the one we get the most often, is this build still good after the Mirne fix? And guys, if you don't know about the Mirne fix, go and watch the 2.6 hotfix video. But guys, the answer is no. So yes, we lost some healing because Mirne was over-procking like crazy, and we lost a good amount of damage because, again, Mirne was OP. But overall, we haven't really lost any speed whatsoever, and what we've done is replace Mirne with Bane of the Powerful. One of the things that we want to talk about right away is kind of the DPS thresholds we've discovered. I wouldn't really recommend running T13 until you're over, a million damage. You might be thinking, oh my god, a million damage is crazy. It's not, guys. It's just basically having the right DPS rolls on your gear. Non-ancient, don't freak out. Now, when you have, a million damage or even 1.5 million and under, you're going to want to swap out your bone armor rune. You're going to want to put in bone armor with dislocation, because you're not going to have enough DPS to kill elites without proccing the triple bonus on the Crisbin sentence. And with bone armor dislocation, we can proc that on demand. So again, guys, you're going to want to throw your golem in, you're going to want to stun them, and then start blowing them up with corpse explosion. And because the mobs are snared due to your Bane of the Trapped, and they'll be stunned, you will proc the triple bonus on the Crisbin sentence, which will make it so that they will die very, very fast, even at that kind of lower damage. And another quick note is, after in-geom procs, you guys can basically spam bone armor because we will be using Dark Reaping. So every kill is going to up your essence by 2%. Even some of the trash might have a higher health pool, so you're going to want to stun them first before you corpse explosion them. And make sure you're only using the command golem on elites. You will struggle if you're just using this on cooldown to kill like a big pack of trash, and then right around the corner you'll see an elite and you have nothing to kill him with. So save this for elites, guys. You'll be able to kill a trash pack pretty easily just by using your blood rush with molting, stunning, and then corpse explosion. You don't need to pop your command golem on trash, guys. Don't do that. That's a bad practice. Now, I will say this is a pretty solid setup overall, even when you get above 1.5 million DPS, because the bone armor with dislocation will A, obviously proc Crisbin triple bonus, but B, it makes it so those mobs that want to run away will be stunned in place for, 2 seconds, which will hopefully give you enough time to throw your golem in and blow them up. Or even if you find yourself pretty squishy, this can help for some survivability. And it's even what we do personally when we're going above GR70, because A, we do need it for the damage at that level, and the stun is really nice for defensive use. Now, once we're around that 1.5, 1.6 million marker, you can afford to drop dislocation again. Now, why would I recommend that? As you guys know, we're using the Johnstone, which says each corpse consumed in Land of the Dead grants a stack of Macabre. Macabre increases the damage of your corpse lance and corpse explosion by up to 200%, while outside Land of the Dead. So while we're in Land of the Dead, everything's going to be frozen. Everything's going to be taking the triple damage from your Crisbin. And then when you're outside of Land of the Dead, at that damage mark, you actually won't be needing to proc the triple bonus of Crisbin. The 200% from the Johnstone is going to be more than enough when combined with close quarters, which gives us that freedom to run bone armor with Harvest of Anguish. One, because the rune itself will increase your movement speed, but two, because of how Bone Storm works with the Inarius set, bone armor becomes like this bone NATO that surrounds you. Basically, every time you hit a mob with it, you're going to be proccing Lost Time, which will increase your movement speed by up to 25%. So you're going to get the movement speed from bone armor plus the movement speed from Lost Time. And this can really speed up rifts when you have a bad rift, which is going to happen, guys. Now, I've seen some variations out there that run the corpse explosion with dead cold, and I think this actually requires up to 1.8 million DPS to be effective. Now, this will obviously just wreck trash. You're going to be proccing the triple bonus with Crisbin, but it's not the trash that this suffers with. It's the elites. Yes, you will be proccing triple bonus on elite, which is really nice, but at 175% less damage than close quarters, you will feel this damage loss. And especially when you run into juggernauts, guys. You will not be able to kill juggernauts at all unless land the data is up. Unless you just have a nice juicy pack of trash to surround the juggernaut. But above, you know, that 1.8 to 2 million mark, Corpse Explosion Dead Cold is a really good rune choice up until a certain point. Above GR70, we actually end up going back to close quarters. It is an insane amount of damage to just give up. And with Bone Armor Dislocation, we can proc triple bonus Crisbin on demand. Another question we get all the time is, I'm so squishy fluff, how do you survive? I just get one shot by everything. Now guys, you do want to make sure, and we see this all the time upon inspecting people, that when you're wearing Unity, your follower also has to be wearing Unity with a relic on that says your follower cannot die. We see this all the time. People are like, I'm so squishy, what's going on? And then we inspect them and their follower is not wearing these two items. So if you're wearing Unity and your follower isn't, this doesn't work. While we didn't go over that in the guide, we did kind of assume, you know, that's kind of common knowledge, and there are a lot of new players, so, you know, take this into consideration, guys. So that's obviously a 50% damage mitigation. We're also getting damage mitigation from the 4-piece Inarius set, and lastly, we get damage mitigation from running Wisdom of Kalan in the cube. Now, even if you are at that 1.5 million damage mark and above, and you still find yourself really squishy, I would really recommend going back to using Bone Armor with Dislocation. Having that stun on demand can really save your life. It can make you a little bit less squishy, and it'll make sure that elites are dying instantly, so you're not sitting there taking damage from them. A lot of this build's tankiness comes from its ability to deal damage very fast. So you'll notice the higher your damage goes, the more tanky you become, and it's not because your toughness is going up, it's because your damage is so high that nothing stays alive to hurt you. That's one of the cool things about this build, is that you'll notice, and you'll continue to notice, as your damage goes up, how much more effective you become. And that's another thing to notice just with the Inarius set in general. The more DPS you get with Inarius, because of how the 6-piece works, you know, the higher your damage, the higher your gems, the higher your DPS, this thing will scale incredibly at T13 and above. There's even builds out there that are just based around you know, Inarius 6-piece doing its damage and having damaging gems in slots, and just basically walking around the map and everything dies, just as long as you have the DPS for it. Now, we don't personally like that playstyle. We like to actively engage in the game. So having that ability plus Corpse Explosion on demand is a lot more fun to us. So you guys will notice as your damage goes up, this thing becomes infinitely more powerful. Now, other things you guys can do to increase toughness, you can use the Blood Rush with potency. Now, I will say not having that corpse on demand with the molting room, once you master this skill alone, you using that corpse close range on demand, it's going to save your life so many times. Not only because you'll be able to, you know, maybe proc Dark Reaping by killing a huge pack of trash with just one corpse, but you'll also be able to chase down that last elite. You know, maybe it's elite that runs away and he's out of your whole pack of corpses and you need that corpse on demand so bad. But it is an option to make you more tanky, guys. Another thing is you can actually drop Wreath of Lightning here for a esoteric alteration. That's definitely going to increase your mitigation. But again, guys, as your damage scales up, you won't need the defense as much. And while we're on the topic of gems, we wanted to touch on all the gem choices that work and what we've used. You can actually still run Myrne if you really want to instead of Wreath of Lightning. I think Bane the Powerful and Bane the Trapped are the two must-stays in this build at all times, especially with Juggernauts being in the game. That Bane the Powerful is really, really nice. But that third gem is really up to you guys. I like Wreath of Lightning for, you know, T13, GR69 and under because it does give us more movement speed, which is really nice. But while in-geom's up, you know, movement speed's effectiveness is lowered because you're just flying around the map with Blood Rush. But really, any one of these runes works. You know, when I'm pushing 70 plus, I actually tend to put in a pain enhancer just because that dot damage is really nice. Gem of Officious Toxin can also work. You kill pretty fast in this build, so it's not as effective as pain enhancer because the damage is over 10 seconds as opposed to 3 seconds. But the damage bonus it provides from the secondary effect is nice, and the reduced damage from mobs is also pretty nice. Again, if you want more tankiness, you can just run a straight up esoteric alteration. And of course, Boon of the Hoarder on T13. We don't usually touch on ways to run Boon of the Hoarder because most of our builds we're trying to make you know, GR speed farming builds in like the 70 range. And obviously in greater rifts, Boon of the Hoarder is absolutely worthless. Mobs don't drop gold in greater rifts. Swapping all these items out can be a pain in the ass, or you can just give up one of your armory slots to do that. But we like to have all 5 armory slots for totally different builds. Now, one variation we see all the time is to run Gold Wrap, drop Unity for Band of Avarice, dropping Wisdom Kalan because you get toughness from the belt, then picking up something like Convention of Elements for more damage, or even something like Briggs Wrath. Now, while this is effective sometimes, I personally don't like this setup. Why? Because we're using in-geom. You know, we're kind of an elite sniper. Yes, we'll stop on big packs of trash at times if we think it's juicy enough to kill, but for the most time we're just hunting down elites, trying to get those globes to further progression and obviously farm as much death breath as possible. So sometimes when you're running Avarice Band and Gold Wrap, you might be flying around the map with in-geom and maybe accidentally let your Gold Wrap buff drop because you're not picking up gold. Maybe you're just porting around a bunch. So then that next time you run into an elite pack or a big pack of trash, your toughness is basically gone because you've sacked it all to run Gold Wrap, and you could potentially die or just be really, really squishy. So personally, I'm not crazy about running Gold Wrap because we do just like to jump from pack to pack, not have to worry about, oh, have I picked up gold recently? But it is really nice if you need the gold for, you know, empowering your rifts. And then there's also a good amount of synergy between Avarice Band and Briggs Wrath and or a Frailty. Basically, every single time you pick up gold, you increase your golden pickup radius, which also increases your aura Frailty range, which also increases the range at which you pull in enemies, which is a really cool synergy, but it feels pretty gimmicky. Because again, guys, we're mostly just kind of an elite killer flying from pack to pack. This can actually slow us down because you might accidentally separate an elite pack on accident by, say, it's a pack of 5 blues and you'll pull 2 away and then you'll dash to the others. They'll all be separated, whereas if you hadn't had Briggs Wrath at all, they'd all be together. And this actually happens pretty often. The second reason I don't like Briggs Wrath personally is because when in-geom is not up and you're just walking or running to the next elite pack, and you are pretty fast, again, guys, because we're using Wreath of Lightning and Lost Time and Harvest of Anguish on Bone Armor. All those movement speed effects are basically lost because you pull the entire screen on top of you and then you're surrounded by mobs. And this happens a lot. Like, you'll be walking, you pull them in with Briggs Wrath, and then there's a mob in your way, and maybe Blood Rush is down because you don't have an in-geom proc. You're basically just surrounded by mobs. Yes, you can wait for a Blood Rush and spawn a corpse and then blow them up, or you can Bone Armor in hopes that one of them will die and then blow those guys up. But this is a nice variation. You know, you can generate density in areas where density is bad. But again, guys, it feels pretty gimmicky to us, and we've played a lot with this. Overall, our speed times actually lessened because of this combination. But again, guys, you guys are totally welcome to run it. There comes a point on an Arius especially where you can basically run whatever you want, especially around, you know, a damage mark of around 2 million. You are free to do basically whatever you want on T13, you know, with high enough gem levels and good enough stat rolls. But those are just the things that we found. You guys are more than welcome to run whatever you guys like. Again, guys, we have just dumped a ton of hours into playing CorpseMancer, and we wanted to share our findings with you guys. And we get tons of comments like, oh, why don't you run this? Why don't you run this? I just want to let you guys know what our opinion was on some of this stuff. You are more than welcome to disagree. Lastly, we wanted to talk, not necessarily speculate, but talk about things that might change in Season 12, things that we expect to change in Season 12. Now, at the very least, we expect Fueled by Death to be fixed, which will make it a really good option instead of running Bone Armor with Harvest of Anguish. It might take out Harvest of Anguish altogether and we'll just permanently run Dislocation, because having that on-demand stun is really, really nice, especially for mobs that like to run away. And then in our offhand, we can basically run any Phylactery that we want. Now, we touched on this a lot in stream, but we're also hoping that they add maybe a Phylactery that buffs both Death Nova damage and Corpse Explosion by X amount if there are 3 or fewer targets. This would be an amazing choice for an offhand Phylactery, and we're really hoping that this is something they add. Other people suggested maybe having that in the Bracer slot. I personally like to run Nemesis at all times. I wouldn't necessarily prefer that option. And if they fix Fueled by Death, you know, we won't really need to run Lost Time, so that offhand will be open for whatever we want. And I think that would be really, really cool. But again, guys, that's total speculation. We don't even know if they're going to make that many changes. But another thing that happened was, a developer jumped into Bloodshed's channel before Season 11 started and maybe hinted that Dainty's binding would get a change. It was hinted that Dainty's binding, instead of just getting more mitigation when enemies affected by Decrepify, they said that they might change it so it works with any curse. That would make this an amazing choice for almost all of our builds in the waste slot. You can see, you guys, on a lot of our builds are running, Witching Hour or Vigilant Belt, stuff like that. But if we got a flat 50% damage mitigation just by running Aura of Frailty, that would be OP. And that might change a few of our builds, and we hope that that's a change that they make, because forcing us into Decrepify alone just for mitigation kind of sucks. Lastly, I wanted to touch on a couple bugs that we've encountered with the Command Golem Flesh Golem. Now, if you're fighting an elite pack and say you encounter something like a waller, say there's walls up and you go to plop your golem and get those 5 corpses, if he lands on one of those walls, they'll actually just kind of stand there and spin in a circle like whirlwind, and no corpses will be put down, which really is A, kind of funny, but B, really frustrating because you need those corpses. And then the other thing is, it might not necessarily be a bug, but if your golem dies, you're actually still able to use the cooldown of Command Golem, even though he's not there. So you'll burn the cooldown, he won't pop any corpses, and then you're kind of double effed, which really sucks. So it would be nice if your Command Golem was dead, which you guys can see, there's an icon that pops up over here when your Command Golem dies. So you want to make sure you don't use this cooldown while he's dead. You see your DI proc because of how Final Service works, and hopefully this will get changed as well. Your minions are consumed when you die, so this means your Command Golem will die. You make sure if you've procced, you don't use the Command Golem right after, because you'll just burn your cooldown and you'll get no corpses. Now hopefully in the future, if something like this happens, they'll make it so that when you try to use the cooldown, it will say, I'm sorry, you don't have a golem at this time, or whatever. I don't have a golem, instead of letting you use it even though you can't get its effect. So that's kind of a shitty gameplay thing to do. That's definitely something you guys need to consider when you're playing the CorpseMancer. But that's pretty much going to do it for the video. Hopefully we've addressed a lot of the problems that you guys are running into, a lot of the questions that you guys might have about the CorpseMancer. And we really just wanted to share those kind of DPS thresholds with you guys, maybe help you guys understand why you might not be performing as well as you'd hoped. But again, guys, if you still have questions, feel free to stop by the stream. I'll do my best to answer the questions, or you can ask them in the comment section below. We do try to do a pretty good job of answering those. At the end of this video, we're going to leave a 75 clear we're able to do with CorpseMancer. Again, we're super juiced up, so it makes 75s pretty easy. And again, I think this could do, 79s in 3 minutes and under if it was fully juiced up. We're still missing a key couple items that can be maxed out, like a good Johnstone. But that's basically it. As always, guys, like, subscribe, come over to Twitch, ask your questions. Support us on Patreon. We love you guys. Peace out.